interesting.
We have AT&T has started like they've been doing it for like 3 years now, but starting to really push the social, internal sharing, communication across silos kind of thing. And so I thought I should pick up some good tips.
That would be interesting. Okay, Miss Olivia. I did not like what my husband just showed me in my living.
Oh.
Tornado warnings are out by our house, and our kids are supposed to be there by themselves. Since they went through the last tornado that came through our house, they don't like storms. I don't like them either.
Nothing good about them, really.
No, well, we were lucky. We only lost part of the garage door. 2 blocks down, they lost whole houses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was scary. Nobody's home. I should say nobody's home to answer the question. I just want to make sure they all feel safe going back to the house, because the plan was that our friend who's been watching them was going to drop them off at the house and then they at home by themselves, kind of a test. There's still an adult, someone here.
Do they have cell phones?
They all have cell phones, so they're going to talk to her, and somebody's going to text me the answer back.
Did you text them?
We've been texting all weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My kids are,
I mean,
they're fun.
you can text them now, right?
I know, I did.
Pop up as a read
But I-
receipt.
But I want to hear from the adult there.
Oh, you want to talk to the adult? Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, no, I've been getting text messages all weekend from them. Josh was even posting on Facebook all weekend. And I laugh at his posts because they're so stupidly funny to me.
Kids.
Especially when they read the comments back that his friends, or whatever you want to call followers, say. Because somebody goes, well, what's a locket? And Josh is so black and white. Well, a lock-in's where you get locked in all night and you play games or whatever, and nothing past that. And I'm just chuckling because that's not really what they're asking, but in his mind, it's so black and white.
Why do they have lock-ins?
Well,
I missed this. I've never been to town 800 people, so I missed
I
a
can
lot.
only tell you from our experience. They had it when I grew up, but not something that I participated in. I didn't start participating in youth lock-ins till I met Dale. When I don't know how much you've listened to Badgercast or talked to friends of ours that know us better, but Dale, I kind of took him out of the seminary before we got married.
Oh.
So for a while, Dale was working for the Catholic Church after when we were dating before we got married. He was director of youth ministry. So he did for his job, everything from like kindergarten up to high school. So for the high school group, they had a couple lock-ins a year. Part of it was towards their confirmation, which is normal. But it's a time for all those kids to get together. We we have adult chaperones, and you have the whole night together to sit and do little focus groups, kind of like what we're doing here, but you do it on a kid level. And talking about your feelings and like in that setting, your relationship with God, whatever you're doing the lock-ins for. So this is a church lock-in, and the church lock-ins we were doing, it was like, how does that relate to your confirmation and the different things we're really high for confirmation? As the adults who sponsored it, that we were the chaperones, it's one of the few times Dale has made me cry. Because he talked about how he felt God was present in his life at certain times where he just kind of knew. And that was when he knew that he was going to ask me to marry him, when he knew before anything happened that his mom had died, and how he knew before his grandmother died. So.
Are they necessarily, are lock-ins necessarily religious? I thought.
Not all of them are. No.
Oh, okay.
In the setting that I'm used to, yes.
This sounds like a conference.
It's like a kid conference is the best way I would describe it.
Why isn't it just called a conference?
I don't know. I don't know how the term lock-in
Or,
originated.
I mean, it sounds like, it also kind of sounds like church camp.
Yeah.
When I went to church camp.
I think you could use either of them. I think probably just the area of the country you're coming from and what they're called. Always the lock-ins where I've been.
So
In
in
the
my
Midwest.
town of 800 people on graduation night, they had a lock-in that was, we're giving away like, kind of like we must be present to win kind of prizes things.
Yeah.
And it went all night after graduation, and like the seniors were given all the senior gifts and everything were like handed out then. But the joke of it was is you could leave. You couldn't come back, but you could leave. And a bunch of the Hispanic kids in my town just didn't show up at all.
I don't know. Dale, when we did lock-ins, when you were GRE, did they have the opportunity to leave, or once they were there, they had to stay?
Once they were there, they had to stay.
Yeah.
So is the purpose of a lock-in to keep them from doing drugs or drinking?
No,
I was told that was the reason for ours was, so on graduation night, we wouldn't be out drinking.
Well, that's a different
I mean, yeah,
reason for a lot.
it's like there are different reasons. And like I said, in our setting, it was more a church-related thing. The one my kids went to last night is church-related, but they're not in that church. I mean, over the years, we don't go to church anymore. We decided to do other things and teach my kids different ways because of what was going on there. So they're there more for a social aspect, where their friends that they went with are there for the social plus the church aspect. I don't know what our friends' kids, why they needed to be there. If it was purely a fun one, or if they were doing other church things.
I guess in
Yes.
theory, if it's, so like if I let my kid go over to his friend's house and it's their parents there, I assume that parent's watching them, but
Yes.
maybe they are, maybe they aren't, maybe they sneak out of that parent's house and how would I ever know?
I would assume
In
the
theory,
same
if they're all in the gym or whatever and the doors are locked and there's, you know, a couple of coaches there, a couple of teachers, it's like, well, they can only get into as much trouble as they can get into inside a gym.
Right.
So,
Right.
The kids love it because one,
Parents aren't there.
parents are there.
and they get to hang out with their friends.
They get to hang out with their friends. They get to stay up all night, which is a big deal when you're.
Yeah, yeah.
Now
Now it's a hassle.
Now it's a hassle.
Yeah.
And then they, you know, they get pumped up on sugar and junk food and they
Like
bounce off the walls.
I don't know what else they did last night. They started off with bowling across the street and a pizza party. And then they went back over, there was a movie, at least in one room, that I know one of my
Hi,
kids went
I'm
to.
Allison.
Hi.
I'm not quite sure what they did.
What do you do? Who do you work for?
I'm currently a web developer.
Cool.
I will be moving out to San Francisco actually.
Oh, great. I'm headed there tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Who are you going to work for?
It's a place called One Lock-in.
Yeah, totally know them.
Oh,
yes,
really?
Yes, absolutely. What kind of development do you do?
Ruby on Rails.
Of course. You probably came in a pretty high.
Yeah.
Good. They need people like you.
How do you know them?
We at Yammer used to use them for our single sign-on solution.
Oh, do you use them anymore?
Well, Yammer got bought by Microsoft about a year ago,
Oh.
so we do not use it as much as we probably did before. But it's still kind of like the hub for where we get certain applications. So
That's kind of cool.
in Soma. We are now in the same building as Twitter, so
Oh, wow.
there's a lot of cool press as Twitter goes for their IPO, and there's lots of news. I don't work in San Francisco, I work here at my
Didn't
home.
they
but
already do that?
They filed for IPO, they haven't gone yet, right? Unless I've been
I
dreaming.
thought I
No,
heard
I-
something on Yahoo.
No, Twitter's IPO was like last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, people bought it and.
Yeah,
they're
it-
ready
Yeah, I was
to
gonna say,
sell it.
then
It doubled
yes.
their strike price on
Yeah.
the first day.
And did it stay up, or is it?
It's been pretty consistent, but I don't
Yeah.
know exactly what they closed at.
Yeah, so they were probably partying pretty hard. Yeah.
This is the only time I'll use the stock app on my phone.
You're like, thank you for this stock app.
What's the, does anybody know the handle?
You can look it up.
All I know is that whatever the handle was, it was very similar to some random company, and then like rumors got out on Twitter that it had gone IPO, and then a bunch of people bought like the wrong stock because it was so
Oh, that's
similar,
fun.
and then like this random, small company like made a bunch of money, and then because everybody thought it was really Twitter, so funny.
I'm looking it up for you.
Yeah. So funny. Well, I know you work for AT&T. Who do you?
I'm a private individual who podcasts.
Fantastic, fantastic. And what about you?
I'm her private individual husband.
Is that like on your business card? Private individual husband. Well, I guess that's a good thing if you were
No,
said,
it's-
I'm just.
Yeah, we're podcasters, and I'm
Great.
podcasting for on and off since 2005.
Okay, great.
I also work in the IT
It's not
industry,
giving it to me
but
when I look up this.
I work for a manufacturing company in their IT department doing
Cool.
back office stuff, which
Who
is
do
a
you work
glamorous
for? Yeah. Who do you work for?
Sub-Zero Wolf.
Sub-Zero Wolf.
We sell
More high-end appliances for your kitchen.
we sell high-end stoves, ovens,
Ooh.
cooking
I'm
appliances.
not in the high end of cooking. That's my husband. I just eat.
Yes.
Yes.
We made our name as an industry that's built in
Stuff.
refrigeration.
Got it.
So, basically,
Did they
you could
stop?
build into your cabinet.
I thought she was in that room, so I was like, she's here, where's she?
Where is he going? Cool. Well, interesting.
Okay.
I came from manufacturing, so this is
Okay.
a completely different world for me, but it's a lot of fun. It's very different. Bless you. So because we've got hopefully a couple more people will come. If not, I do want to make this kind of very casual and get to know you guys a little bit and get to know, and I've got a million slides, but slides are great for this early in the morning. You guys will be asleep in a minute. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and how I can help you guys think about this how do I say, this thing called enterprise social. This is a very not very new for the consumer world, but very new for businesses to think about how do they make this concept internally. And I know Bubba, I can see it on your, okay. So Bubba and I were talking a little bit. He works for eBay, PayPal, and they've been dabbling in enterprise social for a little bit, but it's been very interesting. So, like I said, my name is Allison Michels. Actually, will you throw me my clicker real quick, right behind you? And I actually worked over at First Solar. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. They're actually based in Tempe, but I worked for them in Ohio, and kind of through my rollout, and I'm going to say a failed attempt at a rollout of enterprise social at First Solar, we attempted to roll it out. I thought I had all my I's dotted and my T's crossed, and I'll talk a little bit about what enterprise social is in a little bit. But I thought I had done everything right for a big implementation. We were actually implementing SAP, and so it's like, of course, this will be great to supplement email communication, to supplement phone. And it bombed. It absolutely bombed. And I actually wrote a blog post about why it had gone wrong. So that blog post actually went a little bit viral to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired. This blog post went a little bit too viral. And the CEO of Yammer reached out to me on Twitter and said, hey, why don't you come work for us? So that way you can help other companies not make the same mistake that you guys did. And so that's kind of really where my journey began. And I've been working for Yammer for about 2.5 years, helping companies like AT&T, but I'm on the other side on Verizon, helping companies like ConAgra, Cargill, so very small companies. I was in Dallas working with a nursing home, helping them try and figure this out of how do we connect via social internally and not just externally. So companies do really, really well about an external presence, or they try at least to do well, and some people dabble a little bit. So this is more or less how do we get from an internal perspective, and then what was your name again?
Alexandria.
Alexandria and I were talking, and she has kind of like her own practice, so it's almost like building her own private community that she can control, I'm going to say a little bit tighter than she would be able to via Facebook or something else like that. So it's kind of like this own private social space.
So would you consider it kind of like, I know that supposedly on Facebook you can do it like a private communication.
Yeah.
But I know when I joined it few years ago.
Well, it looks way different than a few years ago.
I set it up,
Yeah.
went away for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then went back and looked, and there was all this crap all over
Yes,
that wall.
yes.
And turned me off forever, and I've
Yes.
never gone back.
So the hard thing with Facebook is because it's gone IPO, it's trying really hard to figure out how to make money. The difference with Yammer is that because it's an enterprise version, we'll never like throw ads in your face or
This
anything
wasn't
like
ads,
that.
this was other people doing whatever they were
Yeah.
doing, and somehow they connected in with my thing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even know these people.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah.
That's not odd. No, this is more controlled where it's invite only. Nobody can just
Okay.
Google your site and
Okay.
join and
That's-
find like that.
That
Yeah.
I would be fine with.
Mhm. Like even for like a TechPHX community, so you know a lot of us participate on Twitter, so it could be like after the fact. It could
Or
be
with like meetups,
yeah, meetups, yeah.
meetup groups, any
Mhm.
kind of specific kind of group
Yeah.
that wants to keep their
Yeah.
thing private.
Yeah, and I would say from a Facebook perspective, from a pages perspective, like TechPHX has a page on Facebook. That's a very good way to push information, but it's hard to have a dialogue. This is more for that rich dialogue that comes with conversation after the fact. Julie, you had a question.
Yeah, how is that different? I come from a hospital setting.
Yeah.
Where what do they call it at work? They call it the iNet at work. Where
Okay.
it's different than the hospital's main webpage that goes out to
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah. Mhm.
It has access only to us
Yep.
employees, but there's not really a conversation going on to it, but it has all the other things that we would, as an employee, would want to see.
Yeah.
Same or different?
Different, but can be integrated together. Absolutely can be integrated together. That would kind of be like your one-stop shop, and then there is an ability to embed a feed of conversation to that kind of home page. So if you wanted to kind of see what types of conversations were happening, that's really good. That is a great mentality for the push conversations, but there's no dialogue between that.
As a hospital employee,
Yeah.
that's what we miss. We miss everything going on with the other departments.
Yep.
Yes, they have an
Yep.
internal structure going on
Yep.
where you have, what do we call it, unit-based practice.
Yeah.
But it's a dialogue only with like the head people.
Yes.
It's not the staff people that need to talk.
Yes, absolutely. I have a video I'm going to show you that kind of talks a little bit about what I think Yammer's sweet spot is. And I think this is something that we are really trying to figure out because what I believe the sweet spot is right now is for deskless workers. You guys probably all sit at a desk, or maybe not you at a hospital, but you know people who don't sit at a desk, specifically in manufacturing. But I think this is really a key piece because everybody has this. And never before have people with only a mobile device, so your manufacturing folks, your people like nurses and doctors who don't sit at a desk all day long, now have an opportunity to connect back with HQ or with headquarters, and that's never happened before. And if it has, it's been very at the water cooler whispers, and nothing really has come from it. Yeah.
I'm a field tech.
Oh,
so,
then
yeah.
perfect. Then this works out really well. So let me show you a really quick video of this, and let's see if I can do this without fail. I don't know. This is kind of what is that? Oops. Okay.
But you have a real keyboard.
All right. Oh yeah, it is there. Oops. Let's see. So this is a story of a lady that works at Jamba Juice. So familiar with Jamba Juice, the smoothie company. And I want to show you kind of her story. And this is why something like this, like kind of a tool like this, has really formed.
Usually I start my day at 5 a.m. I have a little bit of commute on my hands. It's 2 hours both ways, so 4 hours a day. That time on the train is where most of my quality work is done. Check out Yammer, check out things that are going on in the field, and start working. I've been in the restaurant world since I was 14 years old. It was a hard world, and I wanted that balance back that I didn't have for my family. I have a wonderful, supportive husband, and I have 4 great children. My youngest is 16. I love taking pictures of her because she's an amazing goalkeeper. I made the leap over to Jamba Juice, and it's the best thing I've ever done. That moment when I realized Yammer was a game changer for me was when I was able to get on the radar. Support Center leadership was active on Yammer, looking at our responses, commenting and liking what we were doing in the field. I became a training store manager very quickly. About a year later, I became a senior training store manager, and it opened the door. It's the knowledge that I bring from the field. I'm able to help not only our department, but also all the departments that we collaborate with. A position was created, my current role as an associate manager of implementation. A little bit of a success story. I was very active with Yammer. I was confident with the information that I was putting out there, and it exposed me. I'm not stopping here. I want to be a director. I want my own office. My name is Shauna Snyder, and Yammer helped me make an impact.
Every time I watch that, I'm like, oh, I'm so thirsty. I really want. So I think, like, just kind of from an overall perspective, just to kind of give you an idea of really thinking about enabling these people specifically who are closest to the customer. So a field tech, right? Closest to the customer. Whereas a lot of times, and kind of prehistoric, or not even that much, is people at HQ, and this happens all the time, make decisions and they have no idea how it really affects the end customer, right? And so this is, I'm going to say, breaking down barriers in a way that we've never seen before.
You should send this to the White House.
Actually, this is so exciting. So we do have quite a few government agencies that use this. We also have the European Commission that uses this, and the royal family in Britain. They use it as well to kind of orchestrate their stuff within the kingdom of Great Britain. So anyways, I will talk about Yammer a lot just because I work there, but there are plenty of tools. I know we've talked about, there's IBM Connections, there's Salesforce Chatter, there's Jive, there's a ton of different stuff. And in my opinion, you can even use Facebook if that's where your community is. It's all about figuring out where your community lies and figuring out how to make that connection. I have a slide in here, but who knows if we'll get to it, that just kind of talks about, like, if you build it, will they come? It's all about that, like, don't go build something and pray that people will show up, because that's not really how it works. You have to kind of go where people already are, like that homepage where people already are going to check out that information. Make it really easy for people to connect. I'm a big proponent and fight for this often, is let me get to it on whatever device I want, whenever I want it, wherever I want it. Don't make me have to log into 3 different things in order to access something. And so I better be able to access it on my Windows phone, or my Surface, or my laptop, or my PC, or whatever I have, my Google Nexus or whatever she's got there. So kind of that's the mentality there. Is this, are we headed in the right direction? Is this like, yeah, you guys want to keep, okay, yeah? All right, just stop me, because I know this is a pretty small group, so just tell me if you want to hear a little bit more. But this is kind of if we take a step back, I'll kind of walk over here so you don't have to keep turning around, but if we even go back a little bit further, so the speed of information drives change. And I think this is regardless of what type of technology is being used, and I think you guys showing up to TechPHX, you guys know this very, very much. So the speed of information drives change. And then I would also say too, and argue that companies today were not built for the speed of change that we're experiencing right now. They were built for industrial times. Thinking from a manufacturing side, how can we standardize everything? And that's okay to standardize a lot, but so many workers today are facing, and you probably feel this a little bit too, is non-routine work, exception handling. And that is not how companies were built, specifically there. So I have this beautiful chart. I don't know if any of you are chart geeks or not, but I know when I present this, sometimes people are like, ooh, charts. But this is just kind of just talking about what kind of just the value of information has over time. And so obviously the longer information is present, but the amount of change has changed. And then I would say also too, rapid change, it goes less in value very soon if it is a very rapid change. And so kind of like the half-life of information is this area. So how do you manage that area from a company perspective, from an enterprise perspective? That rapidness of change is very, very small today than it ever was before. So even if you can think of like Tower Records, and they're like no longer around, right? Because you had the invention of Napster, you had the invention of CDs and all those different things. And then you come today where it's iTunes, and now it's Pandora and all these different things. So very, 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 very fast amount of change. So somebody said they really liked my animations. I cannot vouch for these. But a lot of times what happens in a company, specifically like an eBay or PayPal or even AT&T, if one person has a question, it takes a long time, specifically if you don't know who on the other end has the answer, to get that question asked. And so a lot of times it has to go up through an org chart, which can slow people down. And I've seen that happen, worked in manufacturing before, and I just was like, what do you mean I can't go and just ask somebody because I need that to get my job done. So it's very, very hierarchical. What Yammer or social tools like that does is kind of brings the power of the network and what people know and brings that very, very close and very, very powerful.
I swear to you, I created this exact same diagram to tell my supervisors why we needed to do this.
Yes. But this is scary. This is really scary for companies because specifically from a middle management perspective, this is their job, right? And so it's so funny because what I've seen working with different companies is the people on the bottom, they love this. This is their voice to back to corporate. This is so great. The people at the top love it because they have a platform that they can sing and dance and everybody's so happy to be there. Those middle managers freak out because they don't understand how do they then manage that flow of information if you can post something and the AT&T CEO can like one of your posts and your manager is completely removed from that, and that freaks people out very, very much. So it's very interesting.
To me, that's not locking them out, though. That means then that middle manager and the higher person need to have a little conversation on how, from the business standpoint, that me as the grunt worker don't want to know about or don't want to participate in, can make it happen.
You've obviously never been a middle manager.
I don't ever want to be a middle manager.
It bypasses their power, that's the problem.
Yes, right? And then they get nervous. And it's so interesting because it changes the role of a middle manager. And I would say, and that's a good thing, but we've seen, I think, and you guys would probably agree, a lot of roles are being very disrupted right now because of technology, right? You used to have somebody that owned and did this and controlled this, and now with people bringing their own devices, or doing certain things, it may or may not be needed. Same thing goes with the middle manager role. I come from a training background. How am I supposed to stop people from just YouTubing everything? Like, I can't stop that. And so I have to figure out how do I add that, element of people going out on their own, but also incorporating it into the training programs that I develop. Hey, go watch this podcast because I think it's really valuable for you, but you also have this mandatory training that you also have to take. So just trying to figure out what is the role of a lot of different roles right now are really, really are struggling with. I'm trying to see what Magic. So this is something that I think is fascinating. So the amount of routine work is, so in 2010 was about 25%. And so if you think about your day job and kind of how much time that you spend with non-routine work, so exception handling, today versus when you first started your work, and then it's going to go up to about 40%. And so if you think, as you're thinking about your teams, as you're thinking about your own kind of space, what that looks like for a worker, that is so different. Whether that's people, saying, hey, this stuff isn't working, and you've got to figure it out on the fly, or stuff that you didn't get trained when you were a new hire because you didn't have that problem 4 years ago when you joined. This is a new problem because of technology and things like that. This, to me, is something that I think companies are going to be grappling with very, very shortly if they don't figure out a way to have this area be helped. And that's where I feel like the social fits. And so I've got a conversation, and this is a thread, and I don't expect you to read that. I've got really cool zooming PowerPoints of just an example of how this works and why this non-routine conversation needs to happen and not be locked away. So Tony talks about, he's a juice person, he talks about and says, hey, these juice bottles are coming, the packaging is broken. Every time they come, it's broken. What the heck is going on? Why is this happening? And so Bonnie, Carl, and Fabrice say, same thing for us. In this plant, in that plant, we've experienced it too. It's not just you, we've experienced it as well, okay? So, and this is within 2 hours of each other, so very, very quickly. And they may or may not have known Tony. They would probably not know him, probably not text him on the weekend or anything like that, so very, very different. So then we've got Molly, and because of the backstory, this is actually a real story. We kind of changed the names for confidentiality's sake, but Molly is actually the VP of the supply chain. And so she has come and said, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. We're gonna go alert the vendor to see what we can do. And then she comes back after 2 hours and says, hey, guess what? We've talked to the vendor, they're gonna adjust their boxing, they're gonna figure out what they can do better. Keep us posted if this still happens. And so this is a non-routine opportunity that this person on the floor had, that where else or how else would this conversation had gotten kind of brought to the light and brought to the leadership's opportunity. I will say that this conversation could totally have happened face-to-face, and it could have totally happened via email, but it might not have happened as fast, because with some of those tools, it's hard to figure out who the right person is to get looped in and to be brought to that attention. When it is very public and very open within the confines of your organization, I'm going to say it surfaces very quickly, and the right people get involved. The other piece that you can hardly see this, but it's kind of talking about where the plants are. They're nowhere near each other, and that is very real reality. AT&T, eBay, I mean, nowhere near each other. So we see those conversations happen all the time. The thing that goes hand in hand with this non-routine work, this deskless worker, this connecting people who do have a voice, who are closest to your customer, is this opportunity for engagement. And this is something that I think companies are really trying to figure out right now, because I feel like the economy is on an upswing, and so now I feel like employees have a choice versus the employers. So if you're not keeping your people engaged, they may or may not stick around. And so how much more engaged is that Tony from the slide before, now that he has an answer within 2 to 4, 5 hours, than he would have been before. And so this is really, really important to have people have a voice, validate concern, and figure out if there is a valid solution or something like that. Questions? Does this make sense? Is this a good example? Yeah.
Previous to not having that,
yeah.
In my mind, what would have happened is, like a month later, it would have been, hey, why are we having so many returned bottles?
Why did we just waste all that money?
Right, because they're breaking, and then, and then that would have gotten, and it would take months to get an answer, or months to even have anything change.
And that's better than what I get. I can go on our iNet and I can write to somebody and say there's a problem in whatever sense,
Yeah.
a piece of equipment, I will never find out the answer.
Yeah, you'll never find out the answer, absolutely.
I have a question.
Yeah,
In the real world, if you have this kind of facility, how do you keep people from spending all their time
Yeah.
looking at
Yeah,
stuff
maybe.
that's not relevant to them, and also stop the internal flame?
Yeah,
Right.
so a couple of things. So how do you keep people from not spending all their time? So because Yammer is very present, it's very available, it's open from an internal perspective, you as a manager or you as anybody can go in and see what people are doing. So it's not like in an inbox, in an email inbox, I can't really go in and search his email inbox to see what he's been emailing all day long. I can't really go in to see and watch how many YouTube videos you've watched this week.
You can't.
I mean, as his manager, I couldn't really. If I had a suspicion, I could go maybe to IT and ask. But with Yammer, it's
HR.
very, yeah.
You go to HR.
Go to HR.
HR comes to IT.
Yeah, right. So it's very open. So if somebody becomes, I'm going to say that guy, we all know who that guy is, right? It is very, very apparent because it's out there. People see it as well. The flip of the coin is what happens if something crazy happens. And I will tell you, I work at Microsoft. We have the largest Yammer network right now at 110,000 people. So you can imagine we have some crap going on. Woo! Lots of crap. And so, for example, a conversation that we use to kind of educate people is we had somebody write in and say, this product sucks. What, did an intern make this? And wouldn't you believe that the person who spent 6-8 months on that project chimes in on that conversation going, actually, that was me. And so it's kind of figuring out, and the community spoke up because it's very present. Now, if he would have fired that off in an email or if he would have whispered that at the coffee, nobody would have known. But because it was very public, the community jumped in and said, hey, that's not really respectful. And instead of dissing his product, why don't you tell him how to make it better? And that's what ended up in this conversation. This guy who said, oh, that product sucks, like literally that's exactly what he said. And we're all like, ah. But we kind of watched it unfold and the community spoke up. And that's what has to happen the first couple of times is that your community has to react in the way that you want the network to go. So I give you another example, ConAgra. They had, their Yammer network was growing like crazy, and somebody posted on their network, hey, I'm running this race. Will you guys donate to my race? Like we're raising funds for MS or whatever. So a bunch of executives are like, sure, yeah, I'll join, yeah, sure, I'll donate. And actually, the community had to say, hey, look, we're not allowed to use email for solicitation. We're not allowed to use Yammer for solicitation. This is not the place for that. And even though the execs were doing that, we had to kind of say is like, no, you can't sell your Girl Scout cookies here. No, you can't do that. That's not this place for that. And so it was very interesting because the community had to kind of step in, and it wasn't horrible. It didn't burn the place down, but they had to say, look, we've got rules around this, and you have to figure this out. The other piece I will say is that the phone will go a long way. Many times when people are interacting online, they don't understand how they're coming across. And so what I do is I work with my customers, and we'll kind of go through and I'll say, have you reached out to that person? That person's kind of borderlining, yikes. And so what the person will do is just give that person a call and say, do you understand how you're coming across? And kind of coach that person and say, you have really good stuff. Let's make sure they go to the right groups. Let's make sure they go to the right people versus just like bleh, like barfing all over the network. Does that make sense?
That's kind of the issue that I see in our company as far as trying to use enterprise social media is that even at a technology company,
Yeah.
there's a large amount of frontline workers who aren't active on social media like
Yeah.
we are, who aren't really familiar with the nuances of
Yep.
communicating via such a network, or some of them don't even have really a lot of the great social skills to even be that great
Yes.
of a coworker.
Yes.
And so you've got all of these people on here trying to say stuff which may or may not belong. And so when I saw her shirt, and that's the Yammer is what we use at work,
Yeah.
it's like, I want to be a part of this conversation because
Yes.
that's something that we need to train frontline employees how to use these tools.
Yes, absolutely. absolutely. And it's so funny because it looks and feels a lot like Facebook, people don't think that you need to do training, and people don't think that you have to handhold something. But trust me, I've been doing the training for 2.5 years. They need it. They need it so bad. And it doesn't matter what age they are. I will fight that to the battle. It doesn't matter if they're 18 and just out of college. They still need help because they have to understand the context in which they would share something with their company versus with their friends that they've been sharing stuff with since they were 14. You know, like that is so different because they don't understand how they're coming across. And so that I think, and I think I have a slide in here, but it actually comes down to 80% culture change and 20% technology. The technology is easy. It's there. People are already used to it. And I laugh. I was talking with the CIO of a law firm, which I'm always like blown away. Like if the law firms can figure this stuff out, like we gotta be able to like pick this stuff up, right? Like they are usually the last to the game. And he was saying that his daughter was like, Dad, his 10-year-old daughter was like, Dad, what's Facebook? Is that like Instagram for old people? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, so what's next for the enterprise? Like we can't even figure this stuff out. So I was like laughing, and so he and I were chuckling, going, oh my gosh, are we really that old? Like, you know, is Facebook really just for old people now? I'm like, oh no. But somebody had something to, yeah.
I was gonna say, so AT&T, you know, so many employees, everything else, and everything that's posted, we have a service really similar to this. Everything that's posted has your name
Yes,
and your picture.
absolutely.
I feel like whenever I go to post and I'm starting to type something up and I'm like, oh man, I really got to dial this back. This is really not going to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a phone call from my manager if I
Yeah.
post this.
But
Yeah.
if you, I'm sorry.
I assume a lot of other people
Yeah.
don't like start name calling and stuff because of that.
Yeah.
But if you think about how people use Facebook,
Yes.
how many stories do you see every day of, you know, a 20-year-old posting pictures of somebody throwing up in a bush at a party? How many
Yeah.
times do you see somebody use Facebook in a
Yeah.
way that's very injurious? And then you're taking all of these people, putting them in a work situation, and you're giving them free reign to take a bullhorn and announce this stuff to the whole world. And it's
But the anonymity is important, that you can't post anonymously. That is so important.
But the other thing, how do you keep people from just sitting and reading Yammer all day instead of working?
You don't.
I mean, you
have to
can't stop
trust.
people from sitting and reading a book all day.
Yeah,
unless
you
you're
have
in
to
the same
trust
room.
that they
You know,
will get
it's-
their work done.
I still have deadlines, I still have tickets,
Yeah.
I still have whatever else. I mean,
Yeah. Sorry,
in
go
theory,
ahead.
if I showed up and watched Iron Man all day, my boss would.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Go. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, people get really brave behind things like
Yeah.
Facebook and even Yammer, and it's,
Mhm.
you know, you have to sort of say to them, no, like, you have to treat it the same way you would if you were like having a conversation
In real
with a
life,
person.
absolutely, absolutely. Because it's a little bit more informal, it is a very interesting conversation, but I think it's a good thing. But I will say that social networks, in my mind, they're very much like a party, like a real life party, right? You will have people at a party, or maybe even like a homecoming dance, right? Like you have people who are out on the dance floor who start the dance, and who start doing it, and then you have your wallflowers who are like, oh, okay, maybe I'll dance too. And then you have people who are like, I'm not dancing, I'm just sitting here gonna drink the punch or whatever. That's very, very similar in a social network, right? Like you have people who are starting conversations and doing that, and then you have a little bit of people who are replying, and then you have the majority of the people who are just watching, and who are just kind of saying, ooh, I might throw a like in every now and then, and that's okay, because that's how they would interact in real life as well. So it's very, very similar to real life. It's just, I'm going to say, amplified in a really, really big way. It's been fun from a Microsoft perspective. I am now introducing Microsoft people, and I kind of consider myself a Microsoft person now. I've been there for a year, which is hilarious. But I'm introducing Microsoft people to Microsoft people, and they like sit 3 buildings away from each other, and I'm over here in Chandler, Arizona, working out of my home, but I know more about their businesses and what they do because of what they're posting and interacting with on Yammer. And they've worked there for 14 years. And I'm like, did you know this person is doing a very similar thing? Can I connect you? And then they're like, oh, wow. And to me, that blows my mind. I'm like, how in the world would they have known each other otherwise? So,
Does Microsoft own Yammer?
yes, yes. So Yammer was a startup. It was founded in 2008 by ex-PayPal director David Sachs and Adam Pisoni. They built Yammer because they were actually doing a company called Genie, that genealogy website. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. Yeah. And so what they found was, why was it that the tools that they used at home were so much faster than the tools that they used at work? And so that's kind of what they did, 2008, and then we just got bought by Microsoft last summer in July, and we are part of the Office family. So if you think about anything Microsoft related, we are just now going to be that social layer across everything. So if you think email, if you think Word, Outlook, if anybody uses Microsoft Link, Skype, all of those different aspects.
I'm sorry.
Oh, she's following me. She should be up here.
You're better and cuter.
I know her from something else. That's so funny.
I went to a conference recently.
Yeah.
Our ERP
Yeah.
family is offering something very similar
Yes.
to Yammer.
Yes.
Yammer.
Who do you use?
We use XA, Infor. So their product is called Mingle,
Okay.
MING.LE.
Yeah.
And it's very much the same approach. And the question I have would be, is Yammer auditable? That was
Yes.
one of the things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the tie that this product is going to do is going to link it back into the ERP.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make changes or like you want to
Yeah,
link
you
to
could
a
follow
purchase order,
objects or purchase
Right.
orders and
you
stuff
could
like that.
follow back into the ERP.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely where we're headed. We have a couple of things. We have a pretty extensive API that people build on top of already. We already have existing integrations. And then this is kind of the vision. Yammer becomes that social layer regardless of where you are. And so similarly to how you were talking is, we don't want to make Yammer yet another place for people to go. We want to make it where you already are and have that ability to have that dialogue. So I was working with TGIF Fridays, and they're a lot of fun. And what they did is they rolled out a mobile app for their wait staff that was their time card, their punch card. So they're punching in with their phone, they're punching out with their phone, but that system was connected to Yammer. So once they punched in, that was their authentication into Yammer, so they could interact with Yammer on their phone because they didn't have computers or anything like that. So that was they built that integration. It's actually really easy. We have a couple different integrations. There's Embed, there's the API, we do Open Graph. So if you're familiar with that at all, a lot of Open Graph objects. But specifically for the ERP space, you can, there's abilities to like follow like the purchase, I'm gonna say purchase rec into a purchase order, track the shipping, and then, invoice and follow that. And then very similar in Facebook, you know how it says so-and-so has read this article, so-and-so has da-da-da-da-da. In Yammer it says so-and-so has changed this purchase order, or so-and-so. It kind of gives those updates from an object perspective of an ERP. But if I don't have access to that in that ERP and I click on it, it's not going to give me access. So the security is going to be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. You're like setting me up. So anyways, this is kind of the vision of kind of where it's headed. And I think that this is really exciting. A lot of, if you are a Microsoft shop or if you do use a lot of Microsoft products, people are like, well, wait, why isn't it there yet? Okay, give us a second. There's a lot of areas of integration. Like for example, I was working with the Skype team down in Palo Alto, and they're like, oh, it looks just like Facebook. Like we could do the Facebook video integration. And I'm like, yes, of course, we will totally want to do that. But there's a long list of projects that they're working on to integrate. But it'll be really exciting because you won't even know from a Microsoft standpoint of where you are. You'll just always have that social element to share files, to do things as well. So questions about that? I talked about it. If you build it, they will come. Don't go build something else. I have to do this a lot with IT people. Like, don't go build your own. Like, go be really good at AT&T stuff. Like, don't go build something completely separate. Like, let us figure out the social. We've been doing social for a long time. Or another company versus like that build versus buy mentality. You know, if you're a hospital, don't spend time building a social network. Like, so yeah. Questions?
Well, at the very beginning, you mentioned that you had an enterprise social media project at First Solar,
Yeah,
and you mentioned that it didn't
yeah.
go well. You mentioned you wrote the blog post that went viral.
Yeah.
What
So
was the
if
blog post?
if
Why didn't it
you,
go well?
yeah, so if you search why Yammer failed, my blog post will come up. And I laugh because it is still my #1 hit blog post today, almost 3 years later. I cannot, like, nobody cares about the rest of the story. Like, nobody cares that it's 3 years old. Like, it still gets so many hits all over time. But what I believe happened is company culture and a little bit of buy-in. I usually have a slide that says, you know, kind of get partnership and get a couple different leaders to help push an initiative like this and to back it. What I had done at First Solar was I had gotten the blessing of the CIO, and I thought that was great. I was patting myself on the back. The CIO loved this. He thought that this was really good. But when it came to the executive staff, I didn't realize that my CIO didn't have a seat at the table, let alone a backbone, let alone any credibility. And the C-suite just squashed it in a minute. And I was very single-threaded. And so now what I am telling people is don't just go through the CIO. Get a couple different execs, get a couple different lines of business to kind of own and help from that perspective. And with the eBay perspective, I know that, because I know personally and I've been involved in the peripheral with them, is they've struggled to find an owner. Does it come out of comms? Does it come out of IT? Does it come out of HR? Who is owning it? And right now it's a bit of like, I want to, no, you can, no, you're paying for it, no, and Yammer's pretty much free, so yeah. So anyways, that is really, really interesting, that ownership opportunity, because that was my biggest fail. And I had somebody in legal who I thought I had her blessing because I had her direct reports blessing. He had gone through the legal with me, and because she didn't have her voice heard, she squashed it, and nobody could stand up to this lady. She is no longer there at First Solar, and guess who's looking at Yammer now 3 years later? I'm like laughing because they're like, Allison, will you come back and help us figure this out? And I'm like, oh, revenge is sweet. But yeah, so that's a little bit about what happened. But, and we see this happen all the time, is that it's not the technology change. The technology is actually very simple because it's a cloud-based, it's SaaS solution. There's no tenants, there's no downloads. I was laughing. Somebody I was working with told me that they got a new computer and like Yammer wasn't downloaded on it, and I was like, oh, you missed the point. Yammer's in the cloud. You don't have to download anything. And I was like, oh. But yes, it mostly is a technology or a culture shift, and the middle managers being okay with their people on Yammer or being okay with people sharing things like that. So yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Two things. Nothing in even Microsoft free software is not free.
Yeah.
From an IT perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a bunch of infrastructure you got to live with and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Second, when you're integrating, what are you going to integrate with first in the suite?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it going to go Office, SharePoint, Link?
Yeah.
Because we use all three.
Yep. Yeah, so it will go SharePoint first. We've already integrated a little bit with SharePoint already. You can do a web part and things like that. The web part is just going to continue to get integrated. Next will be the O365 bit. So that is where we are actively trying to figure the user authentication right now. Is identity management is happening kind of in the background. But currently right now, and because you're IT, I feel like I can speak this and you can get this, is we also already have an Active Directory integration. So it does already work, but they're really trying to streamline the O365 identity. And so that's kind of the hot topic right now of that. Then I would say probably within, I'm going to say 7 to 8 months will be Link. Link is knocking at our door quite heavily to figure that out, but right now we just have such a backlog of opportunity, and we don't want to go down like the healthcare website did when everybody like added on to it, and then it, so yeah.
And just to follow, the assumption is that AD integration would be also allow for single sign-on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blah blah blah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, lastly, would you regarding your pilot?
Yeah.
or your project? Would it be better to pilot among a particular division?
As long as it's not with IT.
Other than IT.
Other than IT, please, please. Okay, so yes, so because of Yammer's viral model, it's a little bit hard to do a bit of a controlled pilot. But yes, what we suggest, and this is kind of, you're setting me up too easy, right? So this is kind of where we say is, yes, that pilot is really important, but we say try and focus on 3 really good uses for Yammer. So 3 really good uses for social. What does that mean? Does that mean connecting new hires together? Does that mean executive engagement where your execs get on and talk to the people? Or does that mean you're rolling out your new ERP system and it's your QA staff that is just specifically focused? What will get you into trouble is if you only do a specific group that is a vertical versus going horizontal. You have to have a little bit of both, or you won't get a really good experience. We've had companies do an IT pilot and with 4 people, and we're like, well, yeah, of course it didn't work. Like, it's 4 of you. You sit next to each other anyways. Like, you can just yell and have the same information. So trying to figure that out is really important as well. From a free perspective, I want to go back to that. So we just announced, I think it was last week, is that Yammer, this is what I say, don't tell them I say this. Yammer's kind of like the air freshener in a new car. So we kind of just get thrown into, specifically if you're going to Office 365, or if you have other Microsoft products, we're kind of just getting thrown in with that. So air freshener, new car, you're not buying anything new or specific or anything like that. And it's free to use anyways. And then what you pay for, kind of like when you have the pieces, that's what you're paying for, is the AD integration, the SharePoint integration, all the integrations, the back end stuff, not the front end. You had a question.
Yes, Ms. Allison, what does ESN mean?
Enterprise Social Network.
Thank you.
Yes. This is something that I'm super passionate about, is community management. Like we've talked before, it's the people who are in the network actually helping guide the conversation, so it's not, I'm going to say a shit show, right? Like I'm allowed to say that here, right? It's Sunday, we're in the weekend, right? Because it can get like that.
Allison what?
Don't tweet that, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, right? No, because it could get like that. And so you have to have people who are on the network to kind of help moderate that. And these are different people than who moderate your Facebook and Twitter pages for the public. These are people who are very connected within your organization. And so this is something that's very different than an ERP doesn't need that. Yeah.
I have a question. When you started talking about how you could trial it with those different things, once it gets to its full potential, can you still have multiple levels of users then, or are you one big open family, or would like higher management still be able to carry on their own stuff?
Yeah. Oh, I wish I had a.
Yeah. We talked about this with that Mingle product as well. Yeah. You can have private groups.
Yes. Yeah.
Because in my setting, if they did it, I can see a whole different conversation with staff, nurse, middle management, education going on versus the real powers that be in the whole direction of the company.
Yep.
And that's part of what I've had to do in my organization as far as coaching is, that's a really great idea, but it's probably not meant for company-wide consumption.
Right. Go take it in this group. Yeah, absolutely. So how the network works is you have a network level that's based off of your email domain, okay? And there is an opportunity to combine email domains. And then you have different groups, and anybody can create any type of group. You can have a public group that's anybody can join, and then a private group that's invite only. So that's kind of how the structure. And then every conversation lies within a group.
So, an example for me.
Yeah.
I help teach and do stuff with different things when it comes to pediatrics and adults.
Yeah.
And something, if we want to keep it just within that learning group and the people that deal with that, it can be kept separate from, like the stroke team or something like that.
Yes, it will be separate, as well as they could also see other conversations by just going to the same site. So they could go and just be focused specifically within that group, but then they could also see other stuff that's going on kind of in the peripheral as well. So yeah, absolutely. And you know, like you were talking about, if there's something that's off topic, at Microsoft we have off topic but rad, off topic but dad, off topic but plaid. We have tons of groups. Everybody can create a group, so we have lots of different groups. So if it is an off topic, if it is a YouTube, if it is whatever, there's a group for that. There's a cat lovers group. I have a picture of the cats, you know, the cat videos, right? Like those are like the phenomenon, but we don't want that meddling up in the all company piece. Like, right, we have 100,000 people. Nobody got time for that. So unless you're a cat lover, post it in the cat group. But there's also very business-oriented stuff as well. So yeah.
So I'm sure this is a very similar concept.
Yeah.
One of our success stories
Yeah.
was in the diagram where she had the org chart and it had the person in the far left asking a question and had to go up the chain and reach the person in the far right. Then the person in the far right could send an email to answer that question back to that person in the far left. And the trick is that everyone on the left side of that org chart at the bottom needed to know that answer. Like, hey, what's the password to this system for some new project?
Yeah.
The project manager, way over on the other side of the company, knows the answer. He can email back that one employee, but the other 3 employees, who might be from a different manager even, will never know that answer until they have that problem. And so they go and ask that question. And that manager goes back to that project manager. So the problem with just having email in order to disseminate that information is you can't get the answer out to everyone where they can get a hold of it. So what we did was we had a group on a project. So every project has a group.
Yeah.
And when you have a question about that project, you ask it in that group. And then so the second person who has that question, they go to that group and they see that question's already been asked and answered last week. And because of the thing about the fast change and whatever else, if you have a question at the very beginning of a project, you have it, it's the first post on the page basically. And then everyone else who also has the same question goes there, oh, it's the first post on this page. And so the answer gets disseminated out very quickly.
Yeah, and it's searchable too. So that's really good. Okay, so we're at time, but just going back to the email thing, one of the baselines that I always do is if you're sending an email out to 5 or more people, it's probably a good opportunity to post it on Yammer. And that's could be a good guideline for the eBay folks is if you're sending your email out to more than 5 people, it could be because could this information be helpful in the future? Could a new hire, if somebody's new to that project, how are they going to get up to speed? Things like that. So with that, I am here, but I just want to be respectful of who's coming in after me. But does anybody else have any other questions? Was this helpful? I have cards if you guys want to talk, and I'm on Twitter all the time. So yeah, good.
What does it take to join Yammer?
Thanks.
What does it take to join Yammer?
Like the company or the?
No, like if I'm an employee and I want to see my company's Yammer.
Oh, just go to yammer.com and write your email address.
And it will tell you if my company has one or not?
Yep, and it'll send it to your company email, and if you don't have access to company email, then you won't be able to get in. So it's all based on that. Yeah. And I've got lots of stories from all sorts of industries. So like I said, worked with food, worked with manufacturing, worked with nursing home, and everybody in between. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And I am based here in Chandler, so that's pretty rare from my perspective. I work out of my home in Chandler, but I travel all the time. But I'd love to connect and get to know you guys. Cool. Thanks, guys. I'll leave my cards here if anybody wants them. I've got all sorts of wires over here. Oops.
Are you staying or are you leaving?
I don't know. I haven't even got that far yet. Yeah. Why?
Because there's someone I want you to meet.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're so welcome.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
of
much.
course.
It's very nice
I
talking
have a
to you.
couple other cards too. Yeah. If you send me an email, I'll only cringe for a minute. No, I'm just kidding.
That's awful.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Thanks again. I will
Oh
be in
yeah,
touch.
sounds good. Please let me know. You guys are special in our hearts.
Trust me, I'm special. So speak slowly and explain things in great detail.
Yeah. Good.
Actually, in all seriousness, I did have one question.
Yeah, of course.
You talked about a community of users.
Yeah.
And having them help police things.
Yeah.
How do you get that critical mass up when you don't have it right now?
Couple ways. One, you have to do a bit of promotion and you have to get a bit of awareness going on. I would say from an executive sponsor. And then two, your natural people who will naturally be those connectors will kind of rise to the top, and you are able to see within Yammer on the leaderboards who's the most liked member, who's the most replied to. So you can kind of start to tell that a little bit as well, and those would be good people to start with too. Or like, who has the most followers? Those types of people, because those will be your connectors within the organization.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The project thing actually really helps with that too, because whenever a project would go out, they would say, if you have questions, here's where to go and ask that question. It's like, don't email the project manager, you ask him on this forum.
Yeah, because the project manager is probably not the only one that can answer it, right?
That or he probably answers the same question several
over and
times.
over again.
Yeah, and it, you know, like you said in your slide, it is a bit of a culture change.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Sorry, are you speaking
Sure.
next? I'm out.
I'm just hooking up.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Hey, I'm gonna stop the recording right before you do that, just to make sure that we get the recording saved. Which one of these buttons is it? So log in, right?
a clicker back here for the thingamajiggy?
We can get you one.
That would be great, because I just brought my flash drive with PowerPoint presentation on it instead of my computer, because it seemed easier.